The story begins in Southeast Asia, where a worker named Harry is operating a forest tractor. Twice, he thinks he sees someone running through the woods but can't quite see clearly and ends up convincing himself that it was just an impression. Nonetheless, he gets quite a scare when his colleague, Tommy, suddenly taps on the glass. Talking to him brings Harry back to reality, forgetting the mystery again. But not for long, as the next thing he sees is even more disturbing. Tommy is suddenly attacked by someone, and the bright-colored vest leaves no doubt that it is indeed him, lying there in the middle of the forest. Worried, Harry gets down from the tractor and grabs an axe before going to investigate. A few steps ahead, he finds Tommy's helmet right next to what appears to be a finger from his hand. Horrified by the scene, Harry runs away and almost drops the axe as he trips over a log. However, his rush only causes him to fall faster into a trap, sinking into a hole full of sharp stakes. Harry manages to react quickly and crawls out without hurting himself, but soon after he gets his foot tangled in a rope, being hoisted upside down. He tries to break the rope with the axe and ends up dropping it again. Then we see a figure approaching, with a mouth all smeared in blood. Harry panics upon seeing the man grab the axe and screams in terror as he is struck. Not far from there, the young men Ajay and Richie are enjoying the luxuries of a lavish resort with their wives, Jasmine and Maya. During lunch, Richie invites his friend for a kayaking trip and says the women can enjoy some shopping. A bit offended, Jasmine retorts that her life is not just about shopping and convinces Maya to go with the guys, despite Richie's warnings about snakes and crocodiles. When the waitress arrives with the champagne, Richie proposes a toast in celebration, announcing that he has finally sold his company for a considerable amount. He also mentions that the entire trip will be on him, and Maya thanks him for the kindness, but the expression on Ajay's face shows that he is offended by the offer. Later, he tells his wife that the company started when they were still sharing a room, and Ajay always thought his friend could have included him. To make matters worse, Ajay now works for his father-in-law and feels that his colleagues do not respect him much. Speaking of the boss, Felix calls Ajay just as Maya was trying to distract him, and she ends up giving up. The next morning, the two couples meet the guide who will take them on the river trip. His name is Nick, and he hands out life vests to the tourists. Ajay gets irritated when he sees that his is pink, but Nick warns that it's forbidden to kayak without protection. Richie makes sure to mention that this trip was charged separately, but he has already paid for it, and Ajay will not have to shell out anything. Upon entering the kayak, Jasmine asks if there are really crocodiles around, and Nick evasively replies, recommending that everyone stay inside the boat at all times. After a quick demonstration, the four young people try their paddles and play around, improving the group's mood quite a bit. Then Nick suggests extending the trip to 2 days, saying that only a few adjustments are needed and that the new route is more interesting. Maya agrees right away, and Nick lets slip an unflattering comment about who wears the pants in that couple. As the current can get very strong, the guide recommends that they keep their cell phones in a waterproof bag that will stay in his kayak. Ajay is the only one who refuses to hand over his phone, and Richie makes jokes about needing to be available for the boss, further fueling the others' resentment. Once these details are sorted out, Nick leads the group downstream, telling them about the legends of local folklore and talking about his long lineage of tour guides. It is then that he mentions that his great-grandfather disappeared in that forest many decades ago after encountering an unknown tribe. Suspecting this story, Ajay asks how he knows about the tribe if his great-grandfather never returned. Nick explains that their belongings were found near excrement containing human bones. Richie and Ajay scoff at the macabre detail, but everyone feels a little scared when Nick reveals that the tribe still exists. He swears there is no danger, as long as they stay away from their area. However, he also adds that deforestation and mineral exploitation have reduced that area. Therefore, it is quite possible that the tribe is becoming increasingly desperate and hungry. Arriving at a swampy area, Nick pauses for everyone to relieve themselves. Jasmine takes the opportunity to throw up her breakfast after all that rocking. Meanwhile, two motorcyclists are crossing another part of the same forest. They are an influencer couple looking for radical videos for their fans. Before moving on, the duo makes sure to show the sinister sign that says not to pass through there. They soon regret their disobedience, as both are suddenly struck by something. The man falls off the motorbike, making horrible sounds as he breathes through new openings in his neck. Not noticing this, the woman still tries to compose herself and only looks at the other bike once the attackers are already fleeing. She goes over and starts screaming upon seeing her companion's helmet in a red puddle. In the river, Richie talks to his wife about their next vacation, mentioning several very chic destinations. Ajay can't hold back and splashes them with water using the paddle, provoking a very childish battle. Amid the mess, Jasmine starts screaming for real, terrified by the snake that has suddenly appeared in her lap. Her kayak tips over, but Nick quickly comes to help and assures her that the snake is harmless. Laughing at Richie's face, Ajay stands up in the kayak to make a video and ends up getting knocked into the water, in addition to losing his precious phone. Once again, Nick saves the day, diving skillfully and retrieving the device. The motorcyclist is still running away in fear and limps along a trail until entering a dark cave. She hides in a corner and gets startled by the bats that suddenly zoom past. While she grabs her phone, we see a man emerge right behind her. It is so dark that she doesn't see him even when she looks back. With no signal to call for help, she begins recording a video recounting the tragedy, but her narration is abruptly interrupted. Someone throws the helmet on the ground right in front of her, and from the shadow on the cave wall, we see that she is struck. By late afternoon, Nick helps the couple set up camp, which makes the guys more jealous than grateful. Even Richie gets angry upon hearing his wife thank the guide. Later, Maya talks to Nick, and he shows her a photo of his great-grandfather, George Robinson. Nick grew up admiring him and thinking about following in his footsteps as a brave explorer, but he was disappointed to find out that George only wanted gold and diamonds. Maya takes the opportunity to ask about that sinister tribe. Nick reveals that there are much more recent accounts, and we see that he is talking about Harry. Cases like his showed that the tribe doesn't always dispose of their victims right away. Without refrigerators in the caves, the only option to keep the meat fresh is to keep the person alive for as long as possible. Additionally, they have a habit of making cuts in strategic places, like the heels. This not only prevents escapes, but also helps train the younger ones, who are not yet that fast. Nick then tells that Harry managed to escape from the cave and cross the river, telling everyone about the tribe. After this conversation, the friends retire for the night, each in their hammock. Jasmine waits until everyone falls asleep to relieve herself. On the way back, she almost screams when she is suddenly grabbed, but then sees that it's just Ajay. The two have been having an affair for some time, and the arrangement was to come clean to their spouses during this trip. However, now Ajay says that he prefers to wait a bit, to avoid jeopardizing his friendship with Richie or his relationship with the boss. Jasmine gets furious upon realizing she is being strung along and pushes her lover away. Ajay tiptoes back to the hammock, unaware that both betrayed partners are wide awake. In the morning, Richie disappears from the camp and everyone grows tense. Nick warns that he took the main kayak with all the phones, and Ajay's device is still malfunctioning because of the water. The only solution is to go back to the river and paddle faster, hoping to catch up with the runaway companion. However, a storm soon starts, preventing the kayaks from advancing. Jasmine becomes very anxious, as Richie has never paddled before and is now alone at some point in that river. Nick wants to keep paddling to the jeeps to call someone who can rescue Richie, but Jasmine disagrees. The current is pulling hard toward a fork in the river, and it's obvious that Richie was swept away there. However, Nick firmly refuses to go that way, and Maya guesses the reason. Hearing that the danger is the cannibal tribe, Ajay challenges Nick, doubting that they actually exist. He behaves very rudely, but this time the women support him, as they don't want to abandon Richie to the whirlpool. Seeing that it's 3 against 1, Nick agrees to paddle over there, but begs for a very quick rescue. Minutes later, they reach the part of the river that passes by the large cave where the motorcyclist was attacked. The third kayak is there, and Richie's vest is thrown on a slope, but there is no sign of him or the bag with the phones. With the excuse that they can't lose the kayaks, Nick volunteers to keep watch while the other 3 search the jungle. Ajay accuses him of being scared, and he doesn't even try to deny it, just warning that he will leave in exactly 1 hour. The group then begins to make their way through the brush, and Ajay notices strange red marks. In the boat, Nick gets startled by every noise and notices movement in the distance. Unsure whether it's his passengers, he grabs his knife and leaves the river to investigate. Walking carefully, he reaches a clearing where he sees several scarecrows dressed in real clothes, and the branches are adorned with dozens of trinkets and accessories. One of the dolls is wearing Tommy's vest, and the oldest is a copy of George Robinson. Nick is examining the grandfather's hat when the scarecrow next to him opens its eyes, and he realizes he's fallen into a trap. He runs away from there, with the indigenous person in pursuit, and manages to reach the river. Back in the kayak, he looks around and sees no danger. Suddenly, a young man emerges from the water with a sharp machete and strikes him in the throat quickly. Simultaneously, Ajay and the girls are entering the cave. Jasmine finds the motorcyclist's helmet and nearly dies of fright when Richie finally appears out of nowhere. He is in a good mood and says he only took the kayak because he was restless and wanted to clear his head, but didn't realize he went down the wrong river. When Jasmine asks about the phones, he swears they weren't in the kayak. As everyone walks back to the river, Ajay asks Richie if everything is okay between them. Without mentioning his wife, Richie says that Ajay is a jealous slacker. He married a beautiful woman who came with a great job as a bonus, and not even that was enough for him. Richie finishes the lecture by returning his friend's phone, which is now working, and advises him to set a password to unlock it. Ajay realizes that he may have seen more than he should have. Back at the river, everyone starts cursing Nick, thinking he chickened out and left. Ajay notices that his knife was left behind, and Jasmine admits that this is strange. With no more clues, the four get into the kayaks, eager to get out of there. A little further on, Nick's kayak appears, and they stop to look for the guide. While the other three snoop around what they think is his makeshift camp, AJ is the only one who notices the blood in the kayak. There is a pot on the fire, and Jasmine almost throws up when she sees the guide's head inside it. Everyone runs to the kayaks, and Ajay starts blaming Richie for the tragedy. No one sees the teenager entering the river silently until Ajay is attacked. He manages to grab the boy's arm, and they wrestle while the rest rush to help, and Maya manages to knock him out with a rock. He resurfaces one last time, but Ajay sends him back into the water using Nick's knife. Richie has an injured arm, and another indigenous person watches everything from a distance, unnoticed. Then Jasmine screams that the kayaks are escaping, and we see that the current has already taken one away. While the tourists try to get around on land, the young indigenous man crawls out of the water, still alive. His partner puts an end to his suffering with a blow from a small axe and consumes his heart. By this point, the group is completely lost in the jungle, and Richie's arm is much worse. He and Ajay are still fighting, and Richie threatens to tell Maya the real reason he ran away in the early morning. When it gets dark, everyone decides that it is too risky to keep walking. Richie takes the first watch, and Maya keeps him company. He reveals that Jasmine is pregnant after many years of trying. Unfortunately, he has run some tests and knows it can't be his. The next watch is Ajay's, who is so bothered by the mosquitoes that he decides to cover himself in mud, abandoning his post without remorse. One of the indigenous people approaches the other three, who are still sleeping, and a second one passes very close to Ajay, but seems not to notice him. Realizing the threat, Ajay opens his eyes and rises slowly from the mud, grabbing Nick's knife. The indigenous person only flinches when a lump of mud falls off Ajay's chest. The two go into a fight, and Ajay ends up blacking out after a blow to the head. But then Richie grabs the attacker from behind, who bites his arm to break free and throws Ajay down a vertical crevice, where he slips and falls to the bottom. Unconscious, he has a bizarre nightmare in which Maya and Jasmine start to eat him. When he wakes up and starts crawling through the brush, a group of indigenous people passes nearby, dragging Richie. Carefully, he approaches his tied-up friend with the intention of saving him. But upon seeing the three indigenous people so close, he changes his mind and just whispers to Richie the promise to save Jasmine. Richie panics at seeing AJ leaving. Then everything happens as Nick explained earlier. The tribe gathers around Richie and makes a cut in his heel before letting him escape. One of the elders touches his blood and brings his hand close to a child's nose so that he can smell the prey. Desperate, Richie limps through the jungle, but with every turn he makes, he encounters another indigenous person, always ahead of his steps. When he finds the youngest boy, Richie begs him to get help, but it is he who pushes him towards the stake. In the morning, Ajay wakes the women and doesn't even have the courage to tell them that Richie was captured. He lies that his friend decided to go ahead again. Maya understands the truth, but supports this version to avoid making her friend panic. Hungry and exhausted, the three begin to make their way almost aimlessly until Ajay hears the sound of the river again. They cheer up at the chance to return to the jeeps, but as soon as they reach the river, Maya sees someone lurking and screams. The others also panic, and everyone begins to run from the tribe, but it is much easier to hunt them if they remain so exposed in the middle of the river. Realizing this, they try to hide in the woods, but they are right in the section full of traps. Jasmine falls into one of them, and a stake pierces her shoulder. Maya asks Ajay to help her down to fetch her friend. Crying, Jasmine apologizes to her without saying why, but Maya just comforts her and says she already knows. It is then that she looks up and sees that her husband is no longer there. Knowing his character, Maya starts to lose hope, but this time she is wrong. AJ has only gone to fetch the knife to help her free Jasmine. The process is very painful and requires a lot of effort. But slowly Maya manages to free her, and Ajay pulls both out of the hole. The three follow the sound of water again and discover that they are on much higher ground, but then they jump courageously, one by one. Swimming until they reach the shallower part of the river, they cheer with joy upon seeing one of the kayaks. Without paddles, the progress is much slower, and it soon starts to thunder. Then Ajay decides to try a risky strategy. He gets out of the kayak and sneaks back into the jungle, recording a goodbye video. He leaves the phone in a tree, playing the video at a loud volume. This attracts the attention of the indigenous person, and this time it is he who falls into the trap. However, Ajay can't take him down all at once as he had planned. The two end up fighting again, and the indigenous person shoves his face into the mud, trying to suffocate him. Then he changes his mind and lets Ajay begin to crawl, only to beat him with the small axe until he is exhausted. Finally, he ties a vine around Ajay's neck and lets him hang while waiting for the kayak to pass beneath him, with the two women asleep. Ajay sees the knife stuck in the tree and starts trying to grab it, managing just in time to free himself. He then strikes the indigenous person from behind and jumps into the water, ready for battle. The two wake up screaming, with the fight happening right beside them. As the kayak takes them away, the indigenous person holds Ajay's head underwater and even tries to bite him. However, he retaliates at the last moment, using his opponent's weapon to defeat him. Ajay reaches the kayak again and is about to climb in when he looks up at the top of the hill and sees shapes emerging from the mist. The entire tribe is there, and Maya starts screaming, begging her husband to hurry. But Ajay knows there is no way to defeat them all and decides to push the kayak, hoping to at least save the women. The two are distressed to see him advancing against the tribe alone. Ajay still manages to take down a few of them, but his end is inevitable. Sometime later, Maya and Jasmine get out of the kayak and climb a huge cliff to return to civilization, where one of the jeeps is already looking for them.